good to be with you again for this daily reflection. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope that the Lord is giving you the strength to endure this difficult time of pandemic. Today's gospel passage is from the 6th chapter of John's Gospel, which is a beautiful reflection on the Eucharist as the bread of life. That chapter begins with Jesus feeding the multitude, but then he goes on to reflect on the deeper meaning that the feeding was intending to bring to the folks, the feeding of their deeper hungers. In the midst of today's reading, we hear Jesus say this: "I am the living bread come down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever. I am the living bread come down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever." Often, when I'm visiting someone who's dying, if they're alert and able, I'll offer them communion. When a person's able to receive communion at the very end of their life, we call it viaticum. It's based on a Latin word that means to travel with you. And in receiving the Eucharist at the end of one's life, we believe we're providing them nourishment for the journey that is before them, their journey from this life to the next. We sometimes call viaticum bread for the journey. I think that most all of us would love to be able to have the privilege and the grace to receive the Eucharist at the moment of our death, to have the best kind of nourishment that can be provided as we journey from this life to the next. Not everyone is able. Sometimes by the conditions we're in or the untimeliness of our death, we don't have that opportunity. But I think it's a grace to pray for, to have food for the journey from this life to the next. It is a grace, and we believe that Eucharist is about the gift of everlasting life. That's what Jesus says: "I am the bread of life. Whoever eats this bread will live forever." However, as we think about the promise of everlasting life that accompanies the gift of the bread of life, I think we should not lose sight of the fact that the Eucharist is also life for our earthly journey. And I believe the best preparation for the life that awaits us is to live well this earthly life that the Lord has given us as a gift. And the Eucharist provides us the nourishment that we need to live this life well, even as we prepare for the life that awaits. St. Augustine, in his reflection, one of his reflections on the Eucharist, said this. He said, "Become what you eat." And I believe that if we really believe Jesus is present in the Eucharist, and we receive him whole heart and soul, body and spirit, and let him take us over, become the blood that flows through our veins, the Eucharist, we come to know, is not just a passive reception of a gift, but it's a transforming encounter with the living Lord Jesus himself. And I think if the Lord is transforming us, if we're receiving the Eucharist not kind of as an afterthought, but as a true act of faith in who it is we're receiving, it's going to change how we live. And I think we'll begin to see life happening through us in the name of the Lord Jesus for our benefit and for the benefit of others. You know, maybe for one week to the next, we can't know how this change is happening in us, but I think if you checked every once in a while, maybe every few months, every couple of years, and ask yourself, is the Eucharist changing me? Am I becoming transformed? Pope John Paul II, in his encyclical on Eucharist, said that to become a completely Eucharistic person, is that happening? A person who professes belief that Jesus is present and that he is the bread of life, and a person whose life is being changed into the kind of servant for others that Jesus was for us. Is the Eucharist providing life for your earthly journey as you prepare for the life that awaits us at the end of our life? So today, as the Lord promises that this bread of life, that he is the bread of life, that the Eucharist, which is our bread of life, as he promises that includes the gift of everlasting life, let's also embrace the thought, the belief, that it's also bread for our earthly journey. As we anticipate the day when we come again to our church to receive the Eucharist, let's let those new opportunities to receive the Lord be life-giving moments when we profess loudly and clearly what we believe, that Jesus is the bread of life, but we let that Eucharist change us and make us more life-giving persons as we prepare for the journey from this life to the next. wonderful day, a wonderful week, and may God be with you.